You want to talk better, whether it's in social situations, school, work, or wherever else. You find that when you talk, you're running out of things to say, your mind is going blank, and that you're having trouble staying with the flow of a conversation. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to stop running out of things to say and how to enjoy conversations more and be more confident while you talk to other people. And the very first tip I have is that in conversation, when you're listening to someone else talking, you have to be more mindful of actually trying to listen as opposed to just waiting to reply. It was a psychologist named Dr. Stephen Coley who said, most people in conversation listen to reply as opposed to listening to understand. And this is to say that too many of us, when we're having a conversation, as the other person's talking, we're just sitting there thinking of, what's the most insightful thing I can say back to them? What can I say that's going to make other people interested? What's the best response I can give to this conversation? The problem with this is that if we want to give actual, insightful, useful feedback or interesting responses in a conversation, we have to actually be present with the other person we're talking to. If we're constantly in our heads thinking about what's the next step, what am I going to say next, then we're missing important information, we're missing important nuances like body language and other information the person talking to us is trying to get across. And most of all, if you're constantly in your head thinking about what you're going to say next, as opposed to actively listening to the person across from you, it's going to be apparent and your conversations are going to feel less engaging. So what we have to do, first of all, is be more mindful to just actively listen, keep all our attention on the person talking, and then after they're done, that's when we're allowed to then think about what our response is going to be. A lot of people get anxious, especially say we have social anxiety, and we're thinking, oh my God, my response isn't going to be good unless I'm thinking about it way in advance. But this is a skill that we need to start practicing over time. Over time, we need to get more and more desensitized, more and more used to waiting until the end of someone else talking to begin to make our point. And you'll realize very quickly that conversations actually become easier when you do this because you have much more to work on. You've been listening better, so you have more of an idea of what to say and what's going to bridge the conversation appropriately. Now, my second piece of advice for talking more in conversation is you want to steer the conversation towards topics that you're actually interested in. This is to say that if you and I are having a conversation about something that I'm uninterested in, say for example, golf, if I really just don't care about the topic being discussed, then I'm going to have much less to say about it. Think about something that you're passionate about, whether it's a video game, movies, sports, or anything else that you really enjoy. Think about your one-on-one conversations with a good friend that you've had in the past where you could just keep yapping about it for hours and hours because you were just interested and excited to talk about it. The same thing applies to talking to new people in new social situations. If we're constantly jumping into conversations that we just don't care about, it's going to be so much harder to actively contribute and stay present and enjoy ourselves. Now, this isn't to say that you should totally derail a conversation about something unrelated. So say a group of people is talking about sports and you decide to completely switch the topic to movies. That wouldn't be appropriate in this situation, but what we're looking for is ways to tie the current conversation into things that we do enjoy. So say the conversation is about sports, which you don't care about, and the other people start talking about one of the specific players who's super buff. If you're into, for example, lifting, you could then transition the conversation slightly to, yeah, I wonder what his workout regimen is. Yeah, some of these athletes are so insane looking. I wonder what kind of weight training regimens they use. This is an example where it's still relevant, it's still similar to the original conversation you were having, but you've moved the conversation slightly more towards something you're interested in and you can actually talk about more easily. Now, the third piece of advice, if you want to be able to talk more, is to avoid what I call conversation enders. And this can mean a couple things. First of all, one-word replies. We want to try to completely eliminate from all of our conversations. So if someone says, oh yeah, you know what, I went down to the shore this weekend, and you respond with, nice. Unless the person you're talking to decides to carry the conversation, there's virtually nothing else you can say about that now. Alternatively, if we were to respond with, say, a question, so, oh, what beach? Or, oh, how was it? Or what's the most fun thing you did? Or something like that, then we create a bridge in the conversation. We have more things that we can now continue to talk about. But when you respond with a one-word answer, for example, oh, nice, or oh, cool, you appear less interested in what's actually been said, and we're not bridging the conversation as effectively as we could. So I want you to avoid one-word answers like the plague. Be mindful of when you do accidentally use them in conversation, and start to think about alternatives that you could use instead. Now, my fourth piece of advice for if you want to be able to talk more in conversation is what we're going to call social warm-up. And this is more relevant if you're going into a higher stakes social situation, or a social situation you might be more nervous about. So say a party with a bunch of people you don't know. It can be extremely helpful when we get social warm-up. In other words, we're engaging in other social situations throughout the day before this event, and we're essentially just loosening ourselves up. We're getting used to talking to other people. We're warming up that muscle throughout the day. Because if you're, say, not talking to anybody all day, barely any words have come out of your mouth, and then all of a sudden you go to a party, you're not in that headspace of being social. You haven't said anything. You're a bit too much in your head of, oh, what should I say? What's off limits? What am I allowed to talk about? When you're talking to people throughout the day, when you've had practice, say, going into a restaurant and talking with the cashier, making small talk, going to the grocery store, asking someone about what they're purchasing, just random small conversations throughout the day, we've warmed up those social muscles. We're used to talking to people, and now it's going to be more effortless when we go into these social situations that matter more to us. I can say for myself, some of the most fun nights out I've had, whether we were at a bar or a club or something else, they always felt the most fun when on the way to the bar, I was making small talk with other people walking down the street. Or say before my friend showed up, I was just yapping with some other guy walking by me. You're not particularly expected to be super amazing at talking cold turkey first thing in the morning when you haven't talked to anyone at all. But it is important that we slowly get that experience. We slowly warm up throughout the day. And then when we hit the party, when we go to an important meeting, when we're meeting new people, it feels easy because we've already been doing this. And now the fifth piece of advice, if you want to talk better and talk more in conversation, and this is going to feel like an odd tip because I don't think I've seen this in any other video. But the fifth tip is that it's very important to take care of your body before the conversation's even started. And what this means is to make sure that all the general baseline things your body needs are taken care of before you go out to socialize. And when I say this, I mean hydration, sleep, eating, and all the general things that just keep your body running smoothly. And you might think, how is this related to conversations? How is this related to socializing? I don't get it. And what I would say to you is compare your social skills on a night where you've gotten a solid 8 hours of sleep compared to the day after an all-nighter or a night where you only got 1 or 2 hours of sleep. When we're taking care of our body, when we're hydrating well, sleeping well, our brains are running faster, cognitively we're there, we're able to manage our thoughts more easily, and therefore conversation will come more naturally to us. When we're dehydrated, when we haven't eaten all day, it's super easy for our thoughts to just slip away from us and to not know what to say, even in situations that would usually feel easy to us. This could be especially relevant to something like flirting. So for myself, I noticed that during days where I was very well rested, I had a lot to eat, I was feeling good, my body was feeling great, I was able to be more social, more flirty, more smooth, and just more articulate with what I was saying, compared to days where I was dehydrated, where I would maybe walk up to a girl and spout some complete nonsense and kind of just feel a little bit silly afterwards. All of the previous tips are important, but none of it's going to matter too much if your body is just going haywire. It's important that we take care of ourselves, take care of our physical health, and the rest will come a whole lot easier for us. Now to review the 5 tips we've talked about in this video. First of all, listen to understand as opposed to reply. People can tell when you're not attentive in conversation because you're just too much in your head. If you make it a point to be more mindful and listen more to what others are saying before you respond, your conversations are going to be more interesting and you're going to have more to work off of when it's your turn to talk. Second, steer conversations towards things you like. Nobody enjoys talking about things they hate. Obviously, you're not going to have anything to say about a topic that you despise. So when appropriate, try to steer the conversation towards things you're interested in without completely derailing it by changing the topic entirely. Third, avoid conversation enders. When someone's telling you about something they did that was exciting or asking for your opinion on something, avoid one-word responses. Cool, nice, awesome, oh, that's great. These are essentially all ways to make a conversation go flat. You want to be able to bridge the conversation, so you have to either ask interesting questions or even just encourage the other person to continue talking. But one-word responses are not the right way to do this. Number 4, social warm-up. You're going to be a whole lot more social in more stressful situations when you've had social warm-up throughout the day, when you've talked to other people, when you've desensitized yourself to talking to new people and just getting words out of your mouth in general. Socializing is going to feel a whole lot more natural to you. And tip number 5, before you think about anything else, you have to make sure your body is running smoothly. That means making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're hydrated, well-fed, and not exhausted for any other reason. It's still possible to socialize without these needs being met, but it's so much easier to go out, be more social, and talk more when you're also taking care of your physical health. Now, I really hope you can find these tips useful. If you like videos like this on socializing, I really hope you subscribe. There's going to be a whole lot more videos like this soon, but until then, I'll see you guys.